world's ending, take a look around. You're tuned into the truth, or at least the truest sound. The path to a better planet, humanity's crescendo. Here's the plan, the regular man's manifesto. Regular man's manifesto. Regular man's manifesto. Regular man's manifesto. Regular man's manifesto.
All right, everybody, this is Chase Scribner. I have Jay McClintock and Cody Pyard with me today, and welcome to the Regular Man's Manifesto. Today we're going to talk about a few topics, one of them being the JFK assassination.
Just kidding, didn't kill him.
The JFK assassination, solitary confinement, and then we're going to have to do a top 5 in every episode. Today's episode is going to be the worst ways to die. Jaybird is going to lead the discussion of the JFK assassination, so I'll let him take it away.
Hi there, everybody. I'm the resident historian here at the Regular Man's Manifesto, so they come to me with a lot of the things that happened in the past. But today we're going to talk about one of the most influential moments in history, which is the JFK assassination. Changed the entire course of things in the 60s, and today we're going to talk about whether the popular depiction is actually what happened. So the first thing I want to talk about is we're going to roll through all the theories.
We're going to talk about
starting
every single theory.
With the main ones. There's about 4 or 5 main ones, including the official history, which is the single shooter, which Lee Harvey Oswald being accused as the single shooter. What does everybody think? Does anybody here support that?
No, absolutely not.
Definitely not.
There's a conspiracy. It was not just him by himself.
And not, I mean, there's also, it wasn't him at all. He was just a Ponzi at it all.
Yeah, how many people here are willing to say that he was at least involved with pulling the trigger?
I'll say he's somewhat involved. But I do not think it was even him who killed him.
Yeah. I would go as far as he was in the building.
Yeah,
that's all I can say. He was in the building. But I think the thing for me is that he realized pretty quickly that he was getting ready to be pinned on this, and he got away, and they were already swarming the building looking for him specifically, and that's when he realized he was about to be Ponzi in this whole thing.
The CIA set it up.
The CIA set it up. So all right, well, we can throw away that theory then with this group. Although that seems to be gaining, I'd say it's been gaining steam in these last 20 years.
I feel like when it comes to conspiracy theories, the longer it goes on, the more it's like, well, the story they're telling us is the truth. So it's like with the moon landing. I used to know a lot of people who were like, the moon landing didn't happen and all this shit, and it's a conspiracy. And now it seems like more of the majority is like, no, you're crazy if you think that. Same with 9/11. I knew a lot of people around the time that are like, 9/11's conspiracy, blah, blah, blah. The more time that goes on, the more people who just don't believe in
the power of those school book history books is just profound. Like it's your first exposure to that information. It becomes.
I mean, time does away with everything. So
another thing too is I guess a lot of people always bring up the magic bullet, and they talk about how. Was it CBS or something put it was years after they made it, they had all these sharpshooters come and see if you could fire off 3 bullets in 5.6
it's
5.6 seconds, and one guy did it after 25 tries or something.
And he's an expert.
And he's an expert. He got it in 5.2 seconds. But technically, there's 3 shots fired, right?
That's what they say. The first one missed.
I'm saying the first one went through, the second one missed, and then the third one is the one that blew his brains out. But my whole thing about it only being 1 bullet is the argument of one is traveled through his back, through his throat, into another guy, and bounces all around, and does all these wounds and stuff. Yeah. And then the other one misses supposedly, and then the other one blows his head off. Well, if it was a Full Metal Jacket, it's designed to go through the body.
Yeah.
And if it's
those would be 2 separate.
If it's a hollow point, it's going to blow your fucking brain off the way that it did.
Okay, that brings us into the second theory, which is a new one that I've seen on a documentary and it's gaining steam, is that the Secret Service accidentally shot JFK in the back of the head with an assault rifle, which is that Full Metal Jacket that
Now, the Full Metal Jacket is a bullet that travels through. It's like supposed to get through like metal and things like that. A hollow point will blow up on impact. So like during the autopsy that they had, JFK's head had all these little pieces of metal inside of it. So that means that it was a hollow point bullet that hit it, because the bullet hit the head, exploded, blew the head off and everything. And the other one came out perfectly fine. Yeah. Totally fine. Nothing was wrong with it at all.
The first one couldn't have been a hollow point. It went through 2 people.
Yeah. Right. Supposedly it went through 2 people.
Well, yeah. I mean, the governor got shot, but you can't say it was by the same bullet. That's what's the hard...
Well, they've lined it up since. They've looked at the way the car actually was. If the seats aren't aligned like a typical car, Connolly was lower in the car.
Lower inside.
That actually fixed the whole magic bullet thing for them, which was a total embarrassment for the Warren Commission, in my opinion. The fact that they released that, not knowing about the way the seats were, completely discounts the whole 850-page Warren Commission, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They just came up with this theory out of nowhere.
Another thing too is like they were talking about how Oswald wasn't like he didn't even make it, very far in the shooting part or whatever. He was like a information guy or something. Like he wasn't any important. He wasn't a sharpshooter sniper rifle guy. Like he wasn't anything.
Yeah.
He might have had he was interested in guns and stuff. But just like take me for an example. Like I'm not interested in guns, but say I was interested in guns and I'm firing guns. There's no way I'm gonna be able to just pull it all together one special time to assassinate someone from whatever 800 feet away and.
To assassinate the president, you got to have a lot of anxiety coming up to that. And you're 6 stories high, hitting a moving target that's far away from you. There's no way. You got to be one of the best shooters in the world.
Yeah. And one of the things that they put as part of like also reasons why he would try and assassinate JFK is his attempted assassination of the general, whose name is escaping me right now, a couple months earlier.
Who did?
Oswald, yes. I'm pretty sure he actually did this. Like the evidence, he told his wife he was going to go do it. And he went and shot this guy in his home. He was in an alley, and he shot a sniper rifle at this guy who was sitting there, not moving, and he missed.
Really?
So this guy attempts to assassinate somebody who's not moving with a sniper rifle and misses, and later on, hits a guy that's moving.
At this point, for me,
2 out of 3 bullets.
I don't think the CIA did it on accident. I think that's what they want you to think they did. I think it was completely intentional to kill him.
The CIA?
He was too progressive.
See, I watched the thing earlier today that was talking about how it was like talking about like what if he wouldn't have been assassinated and stuff. And I guess a lot of people were saying that he wasn't like a big fan of like blacks and whatnot, and that was mainly because like he didn't want to lose all of his voters in the South or whatever, because that was like during the
civil rights movement.
Yeah, it was like super huge. So like he wasn't as vocal.
But he was still a proponent of civil rights.
But he wasn't as vocal. So basically I was reading earlier that he had all these things in place, all these things that were going to pass in place. But like he was going to have to jump loops. Like it was going to take a long time because he didn't have as much power as Johnson had. When Johnson became the president, all those things happened really fast.
Yeah.
Because one is like Johnson was in the government for like his whole entire life. He knew everybody. He also like used like intimidation stuff. Like I was reading that like there was one time where he like said something to some like Congress or whatever, and they were like got in an argument about it, and he was just like, "You're gonna make it happen" or whatever. There was like this quote.
Yeah, it's called the Johnson Tree.
Johnson Tree. Yeah.
Because he was 6'5", and he would basically stand as close to people as possible and just tower over them. And they would, of course, just be intimidated. So, yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah.
LBJ.
Exactly. So, like, I think JFK was going for all that stuff before he was assassinated and all that and everything, but...
So you think him and Lyndon Johnson were on the same page? I don't think they were.
Lyndon Johnson was not going to be vice president on JFK's next ticket, and Lyndon Johnson knew that. Because he was under investigation because one of his top aides had... used prostitution and coercion to make all these things happen in the Senate. And he was connected with Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson was embarrassed. His political career was dwindling at this point when the assassination happened.
I don't know none of that.
Yeah, this happened. Like that's That's why people are.
So you think that like Lyndon Johnson had something to do with it?
I wouldn't say he was involved with the planning, but I think he could connect the dots.
He could easily be the person that they really wanted to be the president because he would do what
Yeah.
they
Look at the
wanted him to
escalation
do
in Vietnam.
instead.
That's the proof in the pudding.
Okay, I guess that and they did talk about like JFK was definitely against conflict
Conflict.
and I'm thinking of the communism.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Is that what I was saying?
Communism, yeah.
Yeah.
So they were talking. Like one of the things that they were talking about was like if he would have like took us to Vietnam and things like that. When like Lyndon Johnson was like all for it. Like he was just like, yeah, let's send the troops, let's get Vietnam.
And that's where
Which was probably a mistake on our part.
Well, the thing that I've read is Lyndon Johnson listened to the military advisors, these people that advised JFK to drop nukes on Russia this whole time. Lyndon Johnson just listened to them. JFK was not about that. He was kicking the people out of the CIA for this crazy Cold War, just aggression towards communism. It was softening, and with Lyndon Johnson, it hardened back up because
I think JFK was more on the side of diplomacy, and Lyndon Johnson was on the side of action. And when you're a military advisor, you think the whole world's going to shit, and we need to do something about it. Diplomacy isn't working, and we need to have action.
Okay. So that brings us to the next theory along the line was the KGB involved? Russia. Communism, that would basically be their CIA in Russia.
I think that'd be a little far. I personally think it's an inside job. I don't think any outside country had anything to do with the assassination.
But you got to think that Oswald had just returned from Russia. He had spent 2 years there. He has a Russian wife.
But then that's saying that the lone gunner
I think that just
situation
makes
is true.
I just think it makes him look more suspicious or more of a patsy or a patsy. Is it a patsy?
Yeah.
They picked the right.
Those words
They picked the right person to.
Yeah. So the FBI and CIA both pulled their trails off of Oswald 2 weeks before JFK was coming to Dallas.
It definitely had motive.
Suspicious?
Well, I've actually to add to
KGB couldn't do that.
Well, without the KGB, not to add to the KGB thing, but to add to the whole conspiracy is JFK was supposed to have a bulletproof dome over his car, and it just so happens that they couldn't get it that day.
Oh, yeah, and they also say, like, oh, he requested it that way. He doesn't request it that way. He didn't request to not have the Secret Service on the back of his car. That's a lie that has not been substantiated over time.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I would say that the KGB has, like, motive to kill him for sure.
The KGB did not have motive. He's the one stopping the United States from dropping all the nukes there.
Yeah. The Cold War, it's all diplomacy with JFK.
Yeah.
The last resort is war.
What I'm saying is, like, I would say they had motive based off of, like, they were embarrassed from the Cuban Missile Crisis.
I don't know. At that point, Russia's still viewed as a superpower. The USSR is still viewed as a superpower. They still have power. There's no reason. I guess
they do have motive. They do have
there is
motive.
I mean, they look stupid. JFK made him look dumb.
No.
A little bit.
Mm-mm.
Really?
The only thing is in the missile crisis, he agreed to take missiles out of Turkey, and Russia wasn't allowed to talk about it. So Russia scored a victory in the whole thing and wasn't allowed to talk about it.
What's the point of winning if you can't talk about it?
But they knew that they had averted being nuked.
Strategic. There's a lot of stuff we don't get to talk about. Like, that doesn't get talked about.
Yeah. So I saved the best for last. Here we're looking at the CIA involvement here. This is the one that I support. I think
I support it too.
also that they were working with the mafia. They had a history of working with the mafia, bringing them in to shoot leaders. They were working with the mafia to try and kill Castro in Cuba.
So this one is CIA involvement.
CIA involvement along with the mafia.
Okay, so I don't know how many leaders have been toppled by our CIA.
It's a bunch.
It's a lot. So it's not out of the norm. It's just what's different is it's our leader that they're taking out.
So I recently just read this book called The Devil's Chessboard, which is about Alan Dulles and the CIA and all the maneuvers that they did during the Cold War era, assassinating leaders, toppling economies. This is standard procedure for them. when Alan Dulles was asked later on in his life about taking out a leader, he said, "Well, you got to find a political outsider that you can pin the whole thing on." What is Lee Harvey Oswald if not a political outsider that people would believe would shoot the president? By the way, one of the things I never realized until researching this is that he was only 24 years old.
I did not know that.
This is not a midlife crisis.
I thought he was 30 something.
Like they say he just wanted to be famous. He was only 24 years old. He was not out of ways to become famous.
Yeah.
To killing a president that he actually liked.
Yeah. I think they picked the perfect person because he's connected to Russia, and in the 1960s that was like our main enemy.
Yeah.
We have to beat Russia.
Yeah, it's hard to understand the hysteria now that people felt. Well, actually, the thing you can draw as a comparison would be terrorism here. It'd be like finding a known terrorist, well, not a known terrorist, just a person that's Islamic, very radical, wants the Islamic State, and then they shoot a president, supposedly. People would believe it in a heartbeat.
I would say, I mean, like, this happened how long ago?
1963.
Yeah, 1963.
Okay. So a while ago. So what, 54? 50,
Yes.
53 years ago? 53 years? So it's been 53 years and people are still talking about it. And I would say the number one suspect, besides what they already said, with it being Oswald, would be the CIA.
The CIA had so much motive. If you read this book, The Devil's Chessboard, which if anybody listens to this, I highly recommend it. It was eye-opening for me. Like, I knew the CIA was powerful. I didn't realize all the dastardly deeds they did in our name, and then they manufactured the Cold War, and they reaped the benefits from it. They gained power, they did all these things, and our relations with other countries are still suffering from what they did 50 years ago.
Here's a thing I just thought of. What do you think would have happened? The JFK assassination would have probably been dead by now if it were not for that one video.
The Zapruder film?
The Zapruder film. If that wasn't out, what's going to happen? Like, we would have been done talking about it in 1964. It would have been over and done. Without that film, you can't create all of your conspiracy theories.
It's one of history's just most astonishing. Like, that camera belongs in a museum somewhere.
100%.
Because well, I don't know if it really changed the course of history, but it created skepticism that is still prevalent. Like, people do not trust our government still from that day because of that.
Definitely.
That shattered everything.
Oh, absolutely.
The CIA was used to just having their way and then nobody even thinking twice about what they're doing until we got video evidence.
So I remember me and you were having a conversation before, and you were talking about how you're talking about the Bay of Pigs thing, and you're talking about JFK and like all that stuff, and you're talking about how.
Don't even get me started. Do you want me to explain the Bay of Pigs and how history needs to be corrected on that?
Well, I was saying because that's a big reason why the CIA would want to kill JFK.
Okay,
right?
so Alan Dulles, the main person.
But if you're saying that you believe that it's the CIA that did it, what's the number one reason they would kill JFK? It's because of the Bay of Pigs.
Yeah, this is the turning point. So the Bay of Pigs, everybody knows, we supported a Cuban revolutionary force going into Cuba and taking over Castro. What we all know is that JFK knew about it, took the blame for it, but what we don't know is that the CIA was planning this for the longest time. They put their worst team on it. People were just astounded by how horrible the planning was on this thing. Castro knew all about it, snuffed it out from the beginning. So when this happens, the CIA and all the military advisors advise Kennedy that we need to send in the troops, bomb the people in Cuba, basically invade Cuba, which is what people have theorized, and I agree with it, it just makes sense, is what they wanted all along. JFK seen this coming, refused to do it, the revolution stops there on that beach, and a lot of people in the CIA lost their jobs. And
one guy did, the main guy.
Alan Dulles, the main person in this book, lost his job. It was just a huge embarrassment for these people, and they didn't forget it, and they thought of him as a murderer because of that, even though they botched the whole scheme from the very beginning. It seems like if you were really trying to do that, you would have done a much better job. They have done it before many times, and on the most important operation, it didn't even get close.
Yeah.
That's hard to believe.
It was botched on purpose.
It was botched. They were trying to force Kennedy's hand. He's not a fool. He's seen it coming. Called their bluff.
Okay. So, do you think this conspiracy will ever die? And I say that because, okay, I looked up some stuff, and the Kennedy Assassination Records Collection Act of 1992 concluded in 1998 that in October 2017, all existing assassination-related documents will be made to the public. And that includes 40,000 documents, 3,000 of which who have never seen.
Man, we have been owed these documents for 30 years.
But I got like a set date, October 2017.
That's been a date before.
But
the
this
CIA does what they want.
I think this was concluded in 1998, that in 2017, all of these documents...
Okay, it's going to come with just a bunch of black highlighter marks on it.
Well, my question would be this.
That's what I was saying.
Is like, why, because there's a bunch of information that's withheld and then it slowly gets released. Why? Like,
They
why can't we know?
documented everything.
Now everybody's dead. That's the main argument, is we gotta wait till everybody's dead. And especially because if it is a conspiracy, you can't have it be shown that it's a conspiracy while some people are still alive.
Well, actually,
they're just going to be killed.
there actually was a CIA operative named E. Howard Hunt that admitted to taking part in the planning of the JFK assassination. On his deathbed, talking to his son, on a recording, he says, I was involved with this assassination. He said, I was a bench warmer, but I was involved with the group.
Is this the guy that you're telling me about that was like really old, kind of like maybe had...
I was saying it was possible that he could have been old, but he was involved with the CIA because he got arrested for the Watergate scandal.
Because he started... Isn't this the thing when you said... He was like starting to talk about it, and his son was like,
His son said, "You have to come.
This. You have to come forward with this information." And then he was like, "No, I don't want to. Like, I don't want no one to know." And then like his son convinced him that like,
yeah, that's
do justice for the people to come forward. So then he came forward. Is that the guy?
I think that's something that you do hold until your deathbed. You don't.
That's a deathbed confession if I've ever heard one.
You don't.
By the way, I helped plan the JFK assassination. You're welcome for everything terrible. Vietnam War, you're welcome. I did that.
The worst war in U.S. history.
I guess it didn't really get much done overall.
No, it was
just
a way
people.
That was the worst war. It was the worst that we've ever had.
Well, we got the war on terrorism now.
Yeah. I mean, that's just perpetual war.
Yeah, but we're not losing the lives.
We're definitely... not a lot of people are dying.
Mm-hmm.
But another thing, too, is you got to think, like, back then, it was like, we would just throw, thousands of soldiers off in nowhere, and they would just be like, "Here you go!" Like,
we didn't have drones, we didn't have the bombing.
They're like, "Oh, it's
capability."
Well, they were more organized, though. The Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese army.
You can't do nothing against.
They knew what they were fighting for.
Because I mean, the Viet Cong are just hiding in plain sight. I mean, they just look like the South Vietnamese.
And the people in Iraq were just kind of chilling, like, we're not involved with this war on terrorism. Like, what are you talking about? And then we just swoop in and destroy everything.
Blow up all their shit. Which creates more terrorists. Perpetual war is what they want.
Alright, so I think we pretty much touched every possible theory or topic or anything that we could talk about that has anything to do with the JFK assassination. We did miss a couple things, I guess. The back and the left, the grassy knoll, other little small things like that.
The man with the umbrella.
Yeah, but I don't really think that those ones at this point play as big of a role as like the CIA and all that stuff. So moving forward, we're going to talk about solitary confinement. Cody is a college student. He just wrote actually a super long paper on solitary confinement. So I think he's going to be the main guy talking about this. And from my understanding is I'm going to be on the outside here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to kind of watch these two, Jay and Cody, argue. And at the end of it, we're going to decide if I'm for solitary confinement or if I'm against it. Okay. So I'll let Cody take it off.
And there was no money promised to Chase when Jaybird wins.
Oh, yeah, right.
No money.
All right, so first off, I'm just going to hit both of you with a little bit of statistics. The United States has 5% of the world's population, but has 25% of the world's prisoners. And on any given day, 80,000 of those prisoners are in isolated confinement, including 25,000 that are in long-term solitary confinement in supermax prisons. Now, I read up on it on all these academic journals and everything, and it has been concluded that after 10 days, it can have lasting psychological effects on you. So we're holding these people in solitary confinement for longer than 10 days, and a lot of them are non-violent criminals that get put into solitary confinement just for just about anything. So
when they say psychological effects, though, these are bad psychological effects.
yeah, negative. It's always going to be negative. You're in isolation 23 hours a day. You get 1 hour outside in a cage a day with no human interaction for 23 hours.
Yeah, my research on this topic turned up that the first usage of solitary confinement was in the 1890s when they would lock people in a room for a day or whatever, more than a day, and give them a Bible.
Yeah.
Like, just read this Bible. And the thing that I've always wondered about solitary confinement is, like, are you given objects to manipulate? Or is it just a room where you can't do anything?
From my understanding, it's just a room.
Yeah.
So, like, one of my brother, actually, he's been, like, kind of, like, in and out of jail, like, his whole life. He just, well, I guess it was, like, Christmas time or whatever. He got to, like, make a phone call for Christmas, and he called us, and he said that he was in solitary confinement because he got in, like, a fight with some people and an officer. He punched an officer, something weird like that. But he said he did. You're in a room with nothing to do. You have nothing. Like, you don't even get, like, a blanket, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you get nothing. You
get
get your little meal, and then that's it. And
you get a meal, a mattress, a toilet, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. And
you
it's
stare at
dark
the wall all
too.
day.
It's pretty much dark.
You barely have any room to walk around. If you're lucky, you have a window. That's very small. It has a bar through it.
And you would do 1 hour a day out in a box outside. So even his outside time was a concrete room where there was no roof. So he couldn't see anything else. Like, a lot of times in movies or whatever, you see them, like, in the fence. Like, each one's in their own little fenced area.
Yeah.
This one he's in a concrete room, basically, with no roof. So all he can see is just, like, clouds or blue sky or whatever. He can't even, like, see.
But your brother got violent and hurt a person that was working there.
I don't know if exactly.
Trying to keep everybody safe.
Yeah, something along those lines.
You got violent.
Either he was.
That's the main thing.
Okay. But that's what is perpetuated among, like, solitary confinement. We need solitary confinement for these violent criminals to punish them some way to make them compliant. But the majority of people in solitary confinement are non-violent criminals.
The majority.
What'd
they do?
Okay, so, for example, some people can be put into solitary confinement for not returning their food tray, for having too many postage stamps.
Yeah.
Pretty much anything that the correction officer deems as not complying, you can be put into special housing unit, which is the SHU solitary.
So what's the recidivism rate on that? So, like, somebody gets thrown into the SHU for not returning their tray. Are they going to do that again? Probably freaking not.
Maybe they will. I mean, I think
they're less inclined.
It's the same way as saying, okay, well, if somebody's thrown into a prison for doing a crime, are they going to do it again? And we've seen time and time again in America, yes, they will. And I'm sure it's the same.
It's way more immediate, though.
No, I think it's the same thing. Why would you want all your freedoms taken away? It's the same thing. It's just to a more degree. To a degree that I think is torture.
I would say what you're kind of saying is like, oh, when you go to a prison, well, if you're going to a prison, for the most part, you have a felony, and when you get out, you can't live a normal life anyway. So that's probably why they get in trouble, because it's easier for some people to live in jail or in prison than it is for them to cope with a normal life. Like, they'll have all these demands. It's like, oh, you get out, well, you have 30 days to get a job, but you can't drive, and you can't live in certain neighborhoods, and you can't do anything. But you have to find a job that pays you, not under the table. You have to find a real job that pays you an actual wage. But you can't drive, you can't get there, nothing. Some people can't even get bus passes. They can't get trained. They can't get anywhere.
That plays into my hand, I think.
And then they say, you have to show up to the courtroom, or you have to talk to your probation officer every day at noon. You have to show up as office. Well, what the heck? How am I going to get there? I'm going to leave work? Like, it's stupid. It's stupid.
Yeah. I think that goes towards my argument that solitary confinement is not the same as people going to jail. It's not the same sort of deterrent. It's not, because in jail they live the same life, and then when you're in solitary confinement, that's a completely different life with a lot less. So, like, it's just a bigger gap in between for them thinking-wise.
No, I disagree completely. I think it plays into my hand perfectly, because the penal system is supposed to be for rehabilitation, and solitary confinement goes against everything that is rehabilitation. Once you are in solitary confinement for even 10 days, and most people are in there for longer than 10 days, it has lasting mental negative effects on you as a person. And then when you get out into society, those mental effects just don't go away. You still have that time. You still have that trauma from being in isolation.
Yeah. Okay. I get it. It is detrimental to your psyche, but so is being in prison in general. I would say at this point, and what we're looking at, nobody's going to argue that the system works.
No, but plenty of people will argue that solitary confinement. Plenty of researchers in the field of psychology, all of them, it's a consensus at this point that it is torture on your psyche. They want to label it as torture. That's the argument right now, is it torture, is it not? And all of the researchers are saying that it is torture. So what do you say against all these professionals saying that it's torture? In America, do we perpetuate torture? Because I think we're not supposed to.
At this point, we're saying torture can be something that you don't even have to touch the person.
Oh, yeah. You can't say you can't mentally torture someone.
You have a prisoner of war and you throw them in a room and you have to keep them with other people.
They don't know when they're going to get fed. They don't know when anything. We're social creatures.
You lose time.
Anything could be torture then.
No.
That is such a loose standard on torture.
That's bullshit, because you're thrown into a cage. You have no clue when your food's coming. You don't get to see the light of day. You have no social interaction. I'll go over some of the behaviors exhibited while you're in isolation. Screaming, banging on walls, mutilation of your body with razor blades, swallowing razor blades, swallowing glass shards, utensils, spreading your feces on the wall, throwing your feces and blood at corrections officers. Those aren't things that normal people do, and these are majority of them are non-violent criminals, where they resort to doing these things because they have to get out of that box for even an hour.
So throwing a toddler into timeout, torture.
Not the same.
Torture?
Are they in timeout for 23 hours a day for 10 days a week?
The certain amount of time makes it torture?
We don't even treat animals the same. If somebody said, I have a dog and I'm going to put him in a box for 23 hours a day until he acts how I want him to act, what would you say to that? You'd say that's bullshit. There's no way that dog should
Wouldn't
be
call it
treated
torture,
that way.
though.
That's because you can't see the psychological change. What I'm saying is all of the professionals in that field of psychology have said there is a psychological change in these people, even after 10 days, to where it is lasting for the rest of their lives. That's why it's labeled as torture.
I'm not gonna take that point away from you, but calling it torture seems very extreme, and it's such a talking point for I think it's
torture.
But you're thinking of torture as like the classic version of torture, like I'm gonna lay you down, like poke you with needles, and like you're thinking of like that. And he's seeing it as just in general, like the fact that you're gonna like control the way that this human is gonna be, where like you put them in this room where they can't express themselves or anything anyway, to where they go actually mentally insane.
Yeah.
Within themselves.
It's torture of the mind.
Be torture of the mind in a way. I kind of see where both you guys are coming from.
Yeah, but calling it torture, though,
torture would be like would be a wrong.
It's too extreme of a term.
I think in the future, within the next 10 years, it will be labeled as torture, and it will not be used anymore.
10 years?
Yeah, the UN right now is already setting up a committee to like saying we should do away with solitary confinement on a global scale because it is torture.
Okay.
All of the researchers say it's torture. It's torture.
All right, so then here's where I'm going to come in. So, question: I'm in jail. You're a corrections officer, and let's say I don't put my tray away, or I keep my tray longer than I should. So what happens then?
I think we should waterboard you. That's what Jay would say, right? I mean,
Jay is only arguing whether it should be called torture or not.
I mean, we're over the argument of whether or not waterboarding is torture, right? Like, that was a discussion not too long ago. It's the same discussion. Is this torture or not?
That's torture.
Yeah.
That's definitely torture.
But that's what I'm saying.
Solitary
All
confinement
of
is
the
not
people who have
definitely
researched it have said it's
Okay,
torture.
we're getting off the point here. Well, my question was,
What should be done?
what else can be done besides that? Like, you're in jail for a reason, whatever it is, and this isn't jail based. This is prison. So most people who are in prison are serving federal crimes, which I guess, like, you can get a felony for carrying, like, weed, or you can get a felony for a lot of other going over, like, 100 miles an hour. I think you can get a felony. You get 3 DUIs, you get a felony. Like, there's a lot of stupid felonies that you can get that you would maybe go to prison for. But for the most part, if you're in prison, it's because you did something wrong.
Okay, so back to your original, not returning your tray, what should happen? Well, that's a nonviolent act, and I think it shows that our corrections facility is broken anyways because we're so apt to use solitary confinement, which is, whether you label it as torture or not, is cruel punishment. And, I mean, I think solitary confinement may have its place with violent criminals, but I think it shows that our penal system is broken in the way that we group together nonviolent criminals with violent criminals, because those nonviolent criminals have to become violent to survive.
Definitely.
In their
I agree
environment.
with that 100%.
So our criminal justice system is broken in that way, where we're just grouping everybody together. We're grouping killers with people who used weed, and it's stupid. But
so okay,
so we need
you're
to fix,
avoiding the question.
No, I'm not avoiding. So there have been ways in other countries they don't use solitary confinement.
Well, what do they use?
They make their system not as broken. So
spray them with a hose.
No, their system isn't as broken down to that, where all of your freedoms are taken away, so you have nothing but to express yourself through not returning your tray because you want to be a badass. No, it's like you're going to lose your TV, you're going to lose these things, you're going to lose all of these privileges that you have, and then the last resort is solitary confinement. We don't have that anymore. All it is now is when you're put into a prison system, you don't have anything anymore.
Well, I mean, like,
So
you do have TV. You have TV, you can get cards.
Not
like
in a
chess.
Supermax.
Most of them you can.
So the solution here is more privileges?
Yeah, I think there should be a program for solitary confinement inmates to move up from. It should be like a last resort to solitary confinement, and then you start to build back your privileges. You start to get back privilege by privilege, and then once you start building those back, you're not going to want to lose them. Why would you want to lose them again?
Well, Mr. Torture, keeping it as a last resort, though. Last
resort for people who, like, violently kill people. It shouldn't.
Rapists. I don't want, if I get ever arrested for something silly, like I dozed off sleeping, I hit a person on a bike, I'm in jail for manslaughter or whatever. If I get raped by somebody, I want that person locked away.
Yeah.
You got that wolf, which is the violent homosexual.
But that's the same argument as being like, well, okay, non-violent criminals shouldn't be grouped with violent criminals, and they should.
Would that be considered? So, like, he was driving and fell asleep and hit a biker. Would that be considered a violent crime since he killed someone?
No, because that's involuntary manslaughter. It's not.
Death
violent.
occurred. That was violent.
But that's involuntary manslaughter. You did not intend to kill that person.
I think actually being grouped with a bunch of murderers is a form of, like, solitary confinement, in my opinion.
Like, just saying, like, just talking, like, prison life, I guess. Like, just, like, stories from, like, what my brother has, like, told me and whatnot. 'Cause he'll tell me stories about how he like learns things from like lifers and stuff, like people who are there forever. Like he'll be like, oh yeah, you know, like if you want extra mashed potatoes, like you got to go to like Becky and like whatever. Oh, if you want a cell phone, you have to go to this guy. This guy will get you this. So like you like while you're there, it's its own little like town. Like you know when you like watch those movies where like prisons are like little towns.
Yeah.
Like that is real life. That is 100% real. That happens in there, behind everyone's back, around everything. Phones are in there. He's called me from a cell phone before.
They created
A random number. I was like, hello? He's like, hey, what's up? I'm just like, whoa, what the heck? Like, you know, because usually he calls, it's like, do you want to take this call? Or whatever. He just calls me randomly from like random numbers all the time because, you know, you buy a phone and then it's like.
What if in solitary confinement they still allow the person to take the tray and go get their food? That would be an improvement, I think.
It would be an improvement. There needs to be an improvement on the solitary confinement. But again, on why it's torture, I didn't say this before, but solitary confinement prisoners account for 50% of all prison suicides. 50%. Only 80,000 on a given day, which is 5% of the prison population, is in solitary confinement. 50% of suicides in prisons happen in solitary confinement. You can't say they're not going mentally insane.
Okay, this talking about like people committing suicide and stuff too. I was watching this documentary recently. It might not have been a documentary, now I think about it. It might have just been a movie or something. But there was like this one, I guess the whole story was there was like this dude who went to jail or prison for like nothing. Like he went there he was only going to be there for like 2 months. I don't know. He got like too many speeding tickets or whatever. Like he wasn't violent or whatever. We ended up like meeting up with this guy and like maybe kind of became buddies. And this one dude was like beefing with like the.
Is this like a male version of Orange is the New Black?
No.
It sounds a lot like
Well,
it.
like he was like beefing with the main person or whatever, and then they end up getting like this big brawl. Okay, and then the whole entire movie is about how the big dog is just like destroying these two kids, just destroying everything. Like, oh, they go here, they get beat up, or they go over here, like this happens to them or whatever. So one of the dudes ends up fucking hanging himself. Because he can't take it anymore. He's just like, I can't do anything. I'm just stuck here. Kind of like he's like in solitary confinement without being in solitary confinement. Because he can't go anywhere in the prison without getting beat up. He's been stabbed. Like you know, these people are trying to, you know, intimidate him to enough to where like this guy's like, I'm done. I don't care if I'm only here for 2 months. I'm out. I'm fucking killing myself.
Being with violent people, like I think
I agree with that.
Being with violent people would be similar to me about being solitary confinement.
Okay, so my question is, what do you think that the prison system should serve to do? Should it just be a straight-up punishment system, or should it be used for rehabilitation, as it is used in other countries that are similar to America?
If we're talking about a total overhaul, then yes, get rid of solitary confinement. But that's not realistic.
Well, then that it is realistic. We should get rid of it because we've seen as it has no benefit.
When have you ever seen a total overhaul, though?
The only benefit solitary confinement has is to create people that will wind back up into the prison system, creating a prison industrial complex that perpetuates itself.
Which is a reality at this point. So unless you're talking about getting rid of that entire industry,
which we should talk about,
and not electing Hillary Clinton,
yeah,
the person who is responsible for it being created in the first place, privatize prisons,
the biggest,
then it's just not a reality. So like the only way these prisons are gonna like operate without the guards being murdered or the people smoking marijuana getting raped is solitary confinement still being a thing.
We need an overhaul. We obviously need an overhaul. Because when we look at our prison system compared to prison systems that are in like the United Kingdom, it's not even close. It's just insane over here.
But another thing too is, like some people don't like to learn from their mistakes.
Yeah, there's always going to be a percentage of the population that don't learn and wind back up in jail because of lack of education, like whatever it is.
Petty stuff. Say they're shoplifters.
They're going to wind back up in that system. But the amount of people who wind back up in that system in America is more so. and the amount of people who wind up in the system in general is more so than anywhere else in the world. In the land of the free, we have the most prisoners. Doesn't make sense.
It's kind of funny though.
It's ironic.
Funny thing to say. It is irony, which I love.
Yeah, it is. It's a tough topic though, just overall, because like I've been to jail. Well, I wasn't in solitary confinement. I was in a drunk tank, which is not the same thing. But I mean, like, if I would have been like locked in a room for 23 hours, probably, I'd probably go crazy.
I spend a lot of time by myself, and that's the thing. I'm scoffing at here is because I enjoy the time by myself.
Like half this room, it would be like half this room with a bed and a toilet, and that's it.
And you don't get anything. You have no
You don't get
distractions.
computer,
You only get this. That's it.
Yeah, if they give them an item to manipulate, that's the thing I had when I was little. Is like if you just give me an item to manipulate,
you can't have an item to manipulate because then you'll slit your goddamn throat.
Yeah. What if they did just give a block or something?
Oh, then they would bash their head in.
Yeah, dude,
Or they would
going,
there's no way. You can't give
them.
them nothing. You can't give anyone, even if they're not violent.
Here's another fact. There's 19 states where you can put a person in solitary confinement indefinitely. Don't have to give them a time that they're going to be released, so you don't ever know when you're going to be released from solitary confinement.
You lose your whole judgment of
There's people that have been in there for 20 years.
Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, we'll get on to an interesting story of solitary confinement. Was a guy named Robert Strout, known as the Birdman of Alcatraz.
Why was he the Birdman?
Well, because he was they gauged his IQ anywhere between 115 to 135, which 135 is pretty freaking high, genius level. But he was obsessed with birds, so he'd find birds, raise them, write books on them. The wardens would have these big arguments on whether we should release these books that are really beneficial to helping birds and stuff, but he was just known for birds and stuff. So he gets sent to Alcatraz, and he's known as a wolf, which in the prison industry apparently is a violent homosexual. So he would just get turned down, and he would just rape the shit out of somebody. So eventually they just they took the easy way out and left this man in solitary confinement for 6 years on Alcatraz. Longest time anybody there was ever left in Alcatraz or in solitary confinement. And he eventually he was 73 years old, still being put in solitary confinement as a violent homosexual.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's just
it's
an example of just
I think it's
people taking the easy way out.
I think it's negligence.
Was he raising birds while he was
It's locking them up and throwing away the key.
No,
because you don't know how to deal with them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yes, exactly. So the only I agree with 100, a lot of what you're saying, not 100%, 80%. But we're talking about throwing the baby out with the bathwater is what you're trying to do here.
Well, okay. Another thing I want to point out is there are more mentally ill people in prisons that our corrections officers do not know what to do with, and that's why most of the time they end up in solitary confinement, because they're not used to complying to these simple rules. They don't know how to do it. They're mentally ill already.
But it's necessary in the time being.
But then we put them in so there's not a system set up to aid their mental illness.
Yes.
And then they wind up in solitary confinement, and then we lock them up and throw away the key. And I even read one thing in New York State, there's more people mentally ill in solitary confinement than there are in mental hospitals in New York State.
There's no mental hospitals anymore.
Yeah.
The civic programs are gone. People do not want to see that we're spending all this money on programs for prisoners. It's just not, at this point in time in American history, it's just not going to happen until the spending goes way up on civic programs like prisons, education. People do not want to see prisoners getting more attention and privileges than... I felt like a prisoner at certain times in school.
Yeah. Yeah.
Schools are a little better than prisons.
I mean, our school had police everywhere, so it's more like we were a prison than not.
So solitary confinement's not going anywhere anytime soon until there's just a seismic shift in the way things are handled here in America. It is such a supplementary issue that you're looking at here that doesn't even, like, you couldn't change that, and it would create more problems at this point.
Well, I think solitary confinement has a problem when it comes to, like, change, and we're not going to see it go away because we're not able to actually see the full scope of the story. So when I was doing all my research for this paper, one of the main things I looked at was there's people who want to do a lot of stories on solitary confinement, but you're not allowed to. None of the prisons, none of the wardens will allow you to go to the solitary confinement unit, talk to the prisoners, talk to the corrections officers. It's like cut off from the world.
Well, it wouldn't be solitary confinement if it was solitary plus reporter.
But that's the same thing as saying, like, okay, well, we want to hide this thing that's happening. These people are going insane. Why would we want reporters in there telling the story of how we just lock these people away forever? That's what they don't want to happen.
Man, people are aware of it. It is not like...
I don't think we're aware of the scope it is. Because, like I said, within 10 days, those effects, those negative effects happen. So you're thinking, well, if the average length of solitary confinement is a month, what is happening to all these people? And then they're just released back into the general population, and then eventually they're released into society again, having those traumatic effects on them, where they're changed as a person.
Yeah.
It's perpetuating the system.
They are changed. We'll say that. Exactly. Of course. But those people they could have raped and assaulted.
But then again, you're perpetuating this thing where it's violent criminals. Only violent criminals are being put into solitary confinement, when the majority is non-violent acts. They get put into solitary. And then, from there, they do these things where they get more time, like going insane and putting their feces on the wall. 10 more days in solitary for that, because they couldn't handle it. And then they just end up staying in solitary for a long time because they go insane before they can get out.
Okay, so I'd be a proponent of softening the solitary confinement. Letting them get out, go fill your tray. Letting them see a person, I guess. Like,
I don't think it definitely should not be 23 hours a day.
So like I'm reading this article, and it says, who gets put in solitary confinement? It says, far from being a last resort measure reserved for the worst of the worst, now it has become a control strategy of first resort in many prisons.
Yeah.
Which, like what you're saying, is like, oh, I forgot to put my fork away the right way or whatever, or I dropped my food on the ground.
Too many postage stamps.
Yeah, like little things like that. Like, yeah, that is ridiculous. Like, I understand that. And I do agree with you earlier when you're saying, like, okay, well, in prison, you don't get any privileges, and when the privileges that you get slowly get taken away when you do stupid stuff. Like,
but nobody's going to, like, okay getting more privileges at this point.
I think it should. I think it should be a system. It should be, as soon as you go to prison, you get a lot of privileges taken away.
Privileges equal money, though.
But then you start to get, what does our system want to look like? Does it want to be rehabilitation? Because if it's rehabilitation, you slowly give back privileges until you eventually, they get out of prison. And then they're able to be a productive individual in society and not go back to prison where they cost the taxpayers money. Because solitary confinement is one of these things that costs the taxpayers an exorbitant amount of money. And then we're just perpetuating the system where we keep these prisoners in prison and it costs us money. It doesn't work.
I don't think solitary confinement is the main part of that problem, though.
It's part of the problem.
I don't think it's the main part.
It's a big part. It is. Yeah, I'm not going to say it's a main part, but it is a big part in the way that when somebody goes to solitary confinement, it does affect them in a substantial way, where it is harder for them to become a productive individual.
We want to make it easier for them to re-enter society. Concede that.
Yes.
Solitary confinement has its place right here, right now.
I don't think so. I think it should be done with. It should be.
You're not going to put a prohibition.
It should be used in an extreme case.
I think from like what I'm getting from your arguments and stuff is, it should be used in an extreme case. Like if someone has too many postage stamps, you're gonna lock them in a room.
Yeah.
Like that's stupid. That's not good. Like that dude just gonna be like literally he's gonna be like, fuck, really? Like I got 12.
And then go insane.
You know, I got 12. You're gonna put me in a cage because I got 12 stands? Well, if you're only doing 2 days, and there's like, well, okay, I'll just go in this room for 2 days, I guess. But like, honestly, you're in prison, so regardless where you're at, it's gonna kind of suck. But like earlier when we were just talking about whatever, like this kind of reminds me of talking about like the psychological effects of like solitary confinement. What was the dude who ran the prison experiment with the kids? Stanford something. What was that guy's name?
But just to fill in on the experiment, it was
Zimbardo.
Yeah.
Philip Zimbardo.
Do you want to talk about it or you want me to?
You can talk about it. We can.
So it was pretty much like.
You know about that?
No, I do not.
You don't know anything about it.
What? Okay, so he set up his students to create this simulation of a prison experiment. They had prisoners and they had corrections officers. And what he ended up finding is that the corrections officers, which they're all students, ended up just treating the prisoners like shit.
Total shit. They're trying to gain control over them.
Yeah, and just did not care what they felt about anything because they were prisoners. They looked down upon them, didn't see them as students anymore, didn't see them as peers, and it just turned into... They had to shut down the program.
Oh, it didn't last very long at all.
They had to shut it down because these students started to get treated so bad. Even the prisoners who were getting treated bad felt like they needed to be treated bad because they were the prisoners. And it just turned into the system of this is how it is, and they had to shut it down because it was going so poorly. And
yeah, like I know recently they just made like a new movie about that or whatever, and it was really good. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's just scary to think about.
It's a dynamic.
You just take. I mean, you can say that with anyone, and you give anyone any type of power.
Yeah.
Or whatever, it changes who they are. Same thing, you know, psychologically. Or if you take someone less power, for the most part, they're going to psychologically break down somewhat. Now take that away from them, and then throw them in a damn cage or a box with no light for 23 hours, where you don't have any social interaction, and you're just going to play with your own brain the whole damn time. You're going to go crazy. Hands down, you're going to go crazy. And for the most part, it's probably not going to make anything better because when you get out, you're going to be crazy.
Yeah, and then you're back into the...
So now you're a crazy guy who just fucking had an ounce of weed on him. Now you're this crazy dude. Now you're in jail probably your whole life because you're a freaking psychopath. Because you were in solitary confinement for 30 days.
So it was torture that did it.
I think it's torture.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
I don't know if it's torture. I would say this. We're going to end on this. We're going to finish this topic. And we'll say this. I agree with both of you in some aspects. Like, yeah, I think that solitary confinement is wrong. But I also agree with Jay on the thing is like, what else is there to do? We have no, you know, how do you gain an upper hand in prison unless we're fucking kicking their ass and you beat the shit out of them all the time? Which that probably won't work either.
But my argument for that
that's literally that is actually already torture.
There's other countries that show we don't need solitary confinement, except for in extreme cases.
Because those people already have those privileges, which is money, which is like it's entirely different circumstances.
But it costs more money to have them in solitary.
Basically, it would be have to break it all the way down to like you'd have to change the way that
the prison system is
even 100%. Before that though, because it would have to be like people do not want to see prisons getting more money than schools, which the schools don't have money.
But
so
that's an argument of all social policy though. We could say that about any social policy. We could say, well, we want to educate our people more, but what about the veterans? They don't get as much, so we shouldn't do that while we're not going to do this too. So what is it?
We're opening a can of worms, guys.
Are we ever going to fix any one thing, or are we going to just say, since we don't do it here, we can't do it there?
Whatever the strongest argument is for, like it wouldn't be spending more money on prisons.
But that's subjective. That's subjective to who you are and what you
think. I mean, if we're going to say that, I would say that if you educate better, then maybe not as many people will be in prisons.
Absolutely. I believe that.
Or we get rid of some stupid laws. But that's just me. But anyway.
That's first, like,
It's
you
a whole- it's-
oh, yeah.
Alright, we're
About
done.
all
We're
in
done.
social policy.
Oh, we could go forever about this, clearly. But alright, so now we're going to move.
No.
I'm not taking the
No
side.
bueno.
I would like to say
I
at this
will.
point that I handled myself okay, considering that I did not write a paper on this, and I do not have all the facts and figures
Yeah.
I think
at my
Really
disposal.
all did pretty
I
well.
presented a great argument.
Alright.
He did. It was hard to defend myself against that. I felt like I was
Alright.
backpedaling.
So we're going to jump into the top 5, which we brought up the top 5 worst ways to die. Dun, dun, dun. And I'm gonna let.
Let's just go 1, 2. Let's just go around.
Okay. I'll start. So should we start with number 1?
We'll just do 1 at a time.
All
Let's go with 5.
You should probably save
Start with
your
5.
worst one for last.
Yeah,
Okay.
start with 5 and go from there.
All right.
Everybody presents their fifth, their least worst way worst way to die.
I literally only have one thing prepared. So
Well, you can just say the same thing every time
Yeah.
you go around.
so seriously, like every single time I've ever thought about like dying, and I just like as a terrible thing, like I always think of it when it goes down to catching on fire. Burning alive would be the worst way to die, hands down. It doesn't matter what way it is. It doesn't matter how it is. I feel like me personally, the worst way would be is like I was in like this metal cage or like metal, like an oven, but it's all metal, and like you're like kind of like naked, like you don't have shoes on or
Put
anything.
trash in there too.
Yeah, because I got a really strong nose, so sure, we'll make it smell bad. Whatever, that is going to be irrelevant at this point.
Yeah.
But and the fire is away from you, but it's warming up the whole metal case that you're in. So slowly, it like gets to you until you're engulfed in flames and you're just like burning
I
alive.
feel like you've had a nightmare about this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I might have a
Yes.
nightmare about it tonight.
I've never had a nightmare about
Sounds
it.
awful.
But I just think that burning would just be like unbelievable. I mean, like because you can't do anything.
It's bad.
You can't defend yourself. Like you can't there's nothing you can do. You can't just be like, oh crap, like now I'm gonna catch on fire. I'm gonna make this quicker than it is. Some people burn for like hours and then live.
Yeah.
Dude,
Fire has been the number one enemy of humanity from the dawn of time.
And it's your number 1 tool.
And it's our number one tool. It's such irony. But I think we can do a little better on this. I'm going to start with my number 5, which is something that comes from a pretty traumatizing personal experience, which is jellyfish swarm. Getting stung by jellyfish until you die.
So you're just like stuck in it.
There's
There's one jellyfish, the box jellyfish can kill you in 13 minutes. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a swarm of them, you're stuck until you die.
Would it happen from actually the jellyfish stinging you, or drowning because you become incapable of swimming?
I think it would have to be the drowning, because I don't think they can get enough stingers into you until you just see, like, it would be like a heart attack maybe would be the other possibility. Like, you get stung so many times you have a heart attack. Might be worse than drowning. Definitely would be
You're
worse.
struggling the whole time, so you're just going to end up eventually giving up.
Yes,
drowning.
yes, but getting so many of them that you just eventually give up and jellyfish.
Becoming incapacitated.
Yeah.
Alright. I'll go. I think number 5 for me is drowning. Period. I don't think drowning is that bad.
It's peaceful, man. You
I
pick the
think-
most peaceful
No.
way to die.
I think
No. I
You're done.
disagree.
Getting strangled to death in water,
Agree.
yes.
Disagree
I think it's
100%. Think about this, man. Think about when you're just like swimming and you like almost like you swallow a little bit of water. You fucking freak out.
But then,
But that's just dying here.
compared to most things that you're going to die from, it's going to happen quickly and
Painlessly.
sort of
I think it would have
peacefully.
The pain is low.
I feel like it has some pain. I mean, it's not going to be like
The pain is low, man. The pain is real
Yeah,
low.
I think it'd be low too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But
Like,
you started with a soft one.
I always think about like what if it was like a terrifying drowning? So it's like you like jump into a pool and you're like swimming along, you're just like swimming along, and then you're like, oh crap, like I'm really deep, like I need to get to the top, and you're like running out of breath, but you're like trying to get to the top, and you're like almost at the top, and then there's ice there.
Well, okay, so that would be terrifying, but
That'd be
I've been
scary.
to learn to swim. I was thrown into the water, and I kind of faced that fear because I was thrown in, couldn't swim, just ended up
Figure it
sinking, and was like, all right, this is it. Like, I'm done. And it wasn't that bad until somebody dove in and saved me. So,
so I'll bring a couple other ones, I guess. What about like being like attacked by an animal, like a bear, or like
being like mauled alive?
Yeah, like mauled.
Getting mauled would be terrible. How about an elephant mauling you?
Yeah.
I think you'd live longer than you'd think you would. And that's terrifying
dude, definitely. I think maybe it would depend. Like, I think it depends on what type of animal it is. Like, I don't think when like a bear or whatever attacks a human, it's not particularly trying to like kill them to eat them. I think it's more of like, get the fuck away from me. But if it's like trying to kill you, they're like, it could just bite your head and just crush your skull, and
Spiders.
that would be pretty painless.
Well, have you ever seen like gazelles being eaten by lions? They're like alive in the process while they're being eaten.
But they're in shock.
But I don't know, like, would that be sort of the same process if we're being eaten by a lion? Where like we wake up and we're like, fuck, we're being eaten?
You'd be in shock still.
Still, you're conscious to a degree.
The body has coped with violent death.
Yeah.
The body has come up with ways to make violent death as palatable as possible.
You might not feel the pain, but you can realize what's going on.
Yeah. Which seems terrifying.
Yeah.
Alright, so I was thinking about switching this one around on my list because it's especially horrifying. Getting crushed by a steamroller. Those construction machines with those tubes.
Wow.
Just getting you from feet all the way up to your head until you're just popping like a toothpaste.
Yeah, that would be bad.
Toothpaste.
That's gotta be pretty painful, horrifying, terrifying. You're not getting a casket at your funeral.
I could just feel like your ankles being crushed, and then from there, like slowly your calves.
Yeah. And of course you're trying to stop it. You're trying to push the thing back, but you can't. You're not strong enough. That's gotta be a pretty terrible way to go.
That sounds horrible.
I did a good one there.
Yeah, that's pretty
I should have saved that for later.
Never
Yeah,
thought
I'm
about
sorry,
that.
everybody.
Mine are inadequate compared to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so mine is life.
Just knowing that you're going to die eventually.
Number 4 for me is just like the slow, inevitable grind of life. Your natural
Right
progression.
now, you are experiencing
I'm
that.
experiencing it, and it's horrible.
Yeah,
So
it's probably worse for some people than others.
I know I'm going to live to be 1,000, so the rest of you guys can suck it.
What about like being buried alive?
Damn you, you just took one of mine off my list.
Buried alive.
man.
Buried alive, which I was thinking is kind of a silly way of describing a way to die. You're getting buried alive. You're still alive. That's not a way to die, right? But actually,
Eventually
it's a death sentence.
Unless you're Uma Thurman from Kill Bill.
Yeah.
And you can punch your way out.
All right. This one has been haunting me for a long, since I figured out what it was, and I was wanting to pick like a mental illness one that I was worried about, and it's dementia.
Oh, that'd be the worst.
Knowing that you have early signs of dementia, that you're going to lose your mental faculties, all of your memories, and that you're still just going to be a husk of yourself is horrifying to me.
No, it's not. That just sounds scary. That's not like a way of dying.
That is
I mean,
a way
it
of
is.
dying because you deteriorate really quickly once you
Consciously
lose
know
all that
that
stuff.
you're losing it too.
It's like your hip goes, and then 2 years later, which people were involved with this conversation earlier, stats say that when elderly people's hips are damaged,
When
then they
they're-
have
when
2
they can't
years
move.
left. Yes. 2 years after that, they die pretty much every time.
Basically, like if they're like up and walking around and then get injured to where they have to either rest more frequently or aren't as mobile as they were before, that their life is
I think
2 years.
just to get back to the dementia or like Alzheimer's is like one of my greatest fears. Your mind betraying you is just I don't even know how.
I'm constantly
cope with
on
that.
guard for like my brain doing anything that I don't want it to do, which pretty much is a lot of the time. But anything out of the normal, like thinking of just any abnormalities, is something I'm terrified of.
Yeah, that would be
All
terrifying.
right, what's your next one,
All right,
Cody?
my next one, my number 3 is torture, and the main thing I thought of was like Hostel, like the movie Hostel,
Oh yeah.
where you like chained up and shit, and
And
they
get
just,
your Achilles slit.
yeah, they just
things like
torture
that.
you to death. Like I
Get
think
flayed.
that movie particularly played on that fear
Mhm.
of being tortured. Like that'd be one of the worst ways to die. Absolutely.
So this one, I would say the Colombian necktie.
Getting your throat slit?
It's like your throat gets slit horizontally, and then your tongue gets pulled through.
What?
Gets pulled through your mouth. A lot of like drug lords and stuff would do that to victims, basically to like scare and intimidate. They like, this is what we do to people who
Do
talk.
they live through the process?
No, you get your slow. So
No,
you get it cut like this. So like most people, when they get their throat cut, is like this way, where it cuts your artery and like you bleed out. So this one will be cut
Vertically.
Yeah, like vertically, and then they'll pull your tongue.
But what I'm asking is, do you live
You would
through...
bleed out. You would bleed out. You'd
But
bleed
you
out.
know that your tongue is through your throat hole.
Yeah, so your tongue, because they would cut your tongue and.
But you're gonna die
man.
pretty quick, and it's kind of it's a more of a message to people that see your dead body.
Yeah.
All right, here's my fourth one.
Oh, never mind. They cut it horizontally. Here's what it looks like.
Here's a picture.
Oh,
The
God, that's awful.
the listeners at home, yeah, it's pretty horrifying.
It's
It's a
brutal.
woman,
I
actually.
wish
A
I
woman
would've-
got it.
I wish I would have never seen that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sorry, Chase. You're a freaking jerk for that. Here's mine, was I was thinking of earlier, is a boa constrictor just squeezing you to death until your like eyes bulge out of your head. And
Or if it was to eat your head before you died. Just like start engulfing you.
but your head doesn't feel anything. Like that's the weird thing about your head is like once you get inside the skull area,
Yeah.
you're fine. There's no sensors up there.
That would be pretty awful.
All right, Goatman, give us your.
My fourth one is, or my second, I suppose, is falling into a well and then struggling until you eventually drown. I think that'd be like the worst thing. Like screaming for help, struggling to survive, and then like your muscles give out and you eventually drown.
That would be pretty terrible. But if you make it out of there, you're famous as a person that fell into a well because that happens all the time.
So.
And Lassie might save you.
So I would say I'm just kind of like reading articles and whatnot about worst ways to die, and one of the
The viewers at home are going to notice that Chase is not the most creative person.
not with this like fire is number one for me 100%. Like
You said
all I
fire
can think about
times.
fire, I can just think fire.
Fire.
Dude, seriously, fire is the
More
worst way.
fire, please.
So this one says bamboo torture.
Okay.
So it says that bamboo can grow at an alarming rate. Some species can grow up to 35 inches in 24 hours. So basically what happens is like you are like either like tied to like a table or whatever, and the bamboo is below you and it grows through your body
Jesus.
until you pretty much die, because enough of them will go through your body and then you die. So basically you are like laid there and the bamboo grows and grows and grows and grows till it gets to your body, and it can only go one way. It's through your fucking body.
Ouch.
That's horrifying.
So that's another version of torture, though. So a lot of these are going to be torture-based, or drowning, or fire-based. So they're all kind of the same thing over and over and over.
Okay, which brings
Remember
me
the
to my
movie
last
1,000
one.
Ways to
It's
Die?
Buried Alive. Chase took that, so I'm going to come up with one that I've heard was really horrifying, Viking style. And I'm not looking this up right now. That's how you should be impressed. It's a blood angel. The Vikings would do this. They would torture you. They would cut you open from the back and then reach into your ribs and pull your lungs out the back and then lay them on your shoulder like a pair of wings.
While you're alive.
While you're alive.
You'd probably die pretty quick, though.
Getting your rib cage ripped open sounds absolutely terrifying.
Watching that, any of it happen.
Yeah, and knowing that's going to happen, like you are about to get this most terrible thing we can think of done to you.
Alright.
Top that, Cody.
I'm going to do, my number one was fire, but I'm switching it. That's probably like my number 6 or some shit. I feel like I gotta be original. I'm gonna say hanging. And not in the sense where like you drop and you break your neck hanging, as like they slowly lift you up and you hang to death.
So
And
kind of
That's
like
not bad at
I think
all.
strangulation.
Oh, man.
I think that's bad because I feel like you're gonna last a long time. You're gonna
2
slowly.
minutes.
No way. You get way like the only reason hanging is like works so well is when you drop, you break your neck.
Yeah.
But if they
How
slowly
long can
lift
you
you
hold
up,
your breath? You pass
it's
out.
not. You're gonna be able to get breaths in. No, you're gonna be able to get like a little bit of breaths. You're
I
gonna
don't think
suffocate.
so.
I think so.
No, I
I
think
think
you
so.
pass out and then you die.
No.
Alright, so I'm going to go...
Or fire. I'll go with fire.
I'm going to make this one original. This is like off the top of the dome. It's getting dark.
Are you guys ready for this?
Good.
Da-na-na.
So this is what it would be. It would be like a torture scenario where like you keep getting so you start with like one of your fingers. You get your finger cut off, and then you lose a certain amount of blood. Then they cauterize it.
Oh, God.
And then they cut your other finger off.
So
So they basically are like just
Piece by
removing
piece.
Mutilate you.
removing all your limbs, but they cauterize them so you're not losing all your blood. Like what's that movie called that has Gerard Butler, Law Abiding Citizen, where he like makes that guy like take that pill or whatever, so he stays awake and he tortures him on the thing and records it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of like that, like this long, drawn out, like couple days worth of just slowly like dying.
Humanity is the best at killing somebody, is what we've learned here today.
Yeah,
If you want somebody to die poorly or horribly, then have a human being do it.
If you got some information, I'm gonna get it out of you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I just want to say thanks for you guys for listening. We're gonna try to record one every week going forward. Just want to say thanks for everyone for listening today. So Regular Man's Manifesto. We're gonna try to keep most of the episodes like an hour and a half, just depending on how many topics we have and whatnot. I think the way that I went today with the 2 topics and having the top 5 went pretty well. So we'll probably stick to that format going forward. Just want to say thanks again for listening, and we hope to hear some feedback from people via like Facebook or wherever we post things. Thanks. We're out.
I love you.
Manifesto.